Awesome. So I am presenting on my European pilgrimage. So the way this trip was set up was there are a number of lady pastors in the presbytery who they said, you know what, we should go on a pilgrimage to Italy to look at the walk of the saints, basically. So the spaces of St. Francis and St. Catherine and St. Clare. And so we decided to go look at those. Switzerland and Germany, though, one of my friends on the Italy pilgrimage, we looked at our itinerary and said, do you want to go a couple days early and stay a couple days late to explore some? So the Italy part of the trip is the pilgrimage part of the trip, the part that is very Christian-focused and very contemplative. But Switzerland and Germany are going to be just slightly more fun, but still cool. So as Jack asked, please ask questions throughout. Don't save them to the end because you might forget about them. So the first thing we did was Carissa and I flew to Paris. And then we had macarons for breakfast, which was lovely. And then we went from Paris to Zurich. So we arrived in Zurich in the morning. Maybe this isn't going to work. We arrived in Zurich in the morning. And then we got separate beds at all of our hotels, but they pushed them, like they're hooked together. So we're like, okay, that's fine, but I figured you guys should see what that looks like. This is just a picture of typical Zurich. We were right there on the river, right where the town is. Oh, you can't tell. I'm not sure what river it is, but it's the one that runs right through Zurich because that's where the train station drops you off. Like that was what it looks like. So the first thing we did, we said we want to find all of the crypts. So we started walking, and within 2 minutes we found a church, and we found a sign that said crypts down. We're like, okay, cool. So there's this really old statue of Charlemagne. I wasn't supposed to take pictures down here, but I did. But that's Charlemagne. He's about 10 feet tall, and he's got a gold crown on. This is just typical street with the big, pretty trees. This is Zwingli. Have any of you heard of Zwingli? He's part of church history. You've heard of him? Yeah, he's one of the reformers. All I really remember about him was his understanding of communion, because I'm slightly more Zwinglian. I should edit that out. Slightly more Zwinglian than Calvin. But he was one of the reformers of the Presbyterian faith. That was just a cool little cat. There was cool graffiti on a lot of the walls that looked like that. And there were gorgeous tulips all along the river. You can see it in the background. And that was us on the river. And this was the next morning. We took some pictures out on the river as well. Carissa, she went to seminary with me. She was the pastor at St. Andrews and St. Andrews and Emsworth Presbyterian churches. She was pastor at both. She now has left those calls and is in charge of all of the ministry at the jail. So. No, it's Emsworth Presbyterian. That makes sense. Yeah, they were both sort of dying, so she left those, and now she does all of the. Oh, well, she was the last pastor there. So she's an adventure buddy of mine. We went to Scotland together in 2016 through the seminary. So she decided to do this adventure with me. So we went and we found this cool museum of Zurich history, and this is the original copy of the Institutes, which it's like second to the Bible for Presbyterians. There's a huge number of volumes of them, but they're Calvin's Institutes, and this was the original copy of it in the museum. I don't think I was supposed to take that picture either. We found a restaurant called the I think it's probably Osbar, and it means the bar where you eat, but we thought it was hilarious, so we took pictures with the cups. So then, that was just an overnight trip in Zurich. We got on a train and went from Zurich to Bern, and then got on another train to our Airbnb in Thun. So this is how we traveled. We didn't check any bags because we didn't want to lose anything. So we've got our backpack luggage and then our backpack on the front, so we looked ridiculous, but that was fine because we were in Switzerland. It's a front pack, yep. So our Airbnb was this one. So it's really cute, and then the view is coming up. That's the view from the porch. So it's cool that all of the rooftops have this greenery going on to like not obstruct the view, but that was the view. And it was not expensive either. We almost thought we were getting scammed until we actually checked in. So that was us. We went to go visit a castle. We saw a castle on the coast, and we're like, let's go find out if we can tour it. So this was a view from the castle. It was probably in the upper 70s. It was mid-May. Our trip was May, like 12 to 27 or something like that. So we got boats out on the water. That water was cold. I thought I was going to go swimming. I didn't get past mid-calf. It's all coming out of the Alps, yeah. It's freezing. Yeah. So just some pictures of the scenery there. So yeah, those are the Alps, just, right there, right behind the mountains. They were so close. And we go to them the next day. Spoiler alert. That's about as close into the water as we got. So that was the castle we saw. This is just a cool view of the castle from the entrance. We did a lot of touring of the castle. I didn't take many pictures inside, but it was a weird, quirky little building. My favorite part of the castle was there was one point so it's like a museum where it tells you where to go next, and it gives you a history of like, here's what this room was for, and here's what this room was for. And there was a door that had you pretend you were part of the wait staff, and it's like, take a deep breath as you go through this door, because now you have to take care of the royal people as you walk through. And you open a door, and we pushed open the door, and all the people in that room just stared at us like we were crazy, and we couldn't figure out why. And then we realized we had come through a secret portal in the wall, and we couldn't go back, we could not figure out how to recreate it because the door shut behind us, and it was flush with the wall. It had the same wainscoting. It's like, I have no idea how we really got there. But everyone thought we were crazy. We just popped out of a wall. So it was a fun castle. It doesn't have a moat. No, this is just like roped off. But there's some cool paintings in there. This was actually in the chapel. This is nothing compared to what happens in Italy, but there were some cool ceiling paintings in there. This was the view of up the hill from where we were in the castle. So it's just cute and quaint and very Switzerland, I think. Just another view of the castle. Some flowers growing out of the wall, which I thought were cool looking. And there's one of the, I don't know what you call them, parapets or turrets or something of the castle. There was a chapel inside that thing. You could actually walk inside it, and there was a tiny fireplace, and I guess they had weddings there back in the day. I think that pole goes down into the water. Yeah, that thing is out over the water. I think I had that one already. Just some cool photos of all the spiky things, trying to keep people out. Again, another piece of the castle. A statue in the garden. There were these massive gardens out back, and we had to leave because they were closing the grounds, but you could have explored these grounds for hours. Just the gorgeous, gorgeous gardens. This is the view from where we started taking pictures and called them dinner views. So this was from where I was sitting at the restaurant, looking at the castle in the mountains. This is Swiss-style grilled cheese. I was like, well, that sounds interesting. They couldn't really explain to me what it was. There's a piece of toast buried under all of that melted cheese. I just thought the garnishes were hilarious. There's cantaloupe, tomato, and 2 slices of pickle with some paprika on top. And it's just melted Swiss cheese and toast. It was bizarre. It was very good, though. No. Was it good? Yes. Was that a cheese joke? Yes. And then this was some sort of magical hot berry dessert that they also had there. And this was, again, the view from our porch. They sent us home with a little bottle of wine from that restaurant. So The sunset was not bad there either. So the next day, our plan was to go to Grindelwald and just sort of explore what was there. So while we were riding on a train, if you've ever ridden on a train, there's little tables between you and the person across from you. And there was a map of the area and told you where all the things were. And one of the things said top of Europe, and then had like the name of the train that went to it. And we just sort of looked at each other and we're like, why aren't we going to the top of Europe? So we went to Grindelwald and then hopped on another train that took us to the top of Europe. So here's Grindelwald. We took a train here. We took this huge gondola that goes up the diagonal to whatever the name of that place is. I'm not even gonna try. And then from there, we're like, oh, this is really cool. The views are gorgeous. And I have a couple pictures of it in here. And then you take a 20-minute train. This train literally is in the mountain. Like they have carved, and the tunnel is 2 feet bigger than the train in each direction. 20-minute train up through the mountain to Jungfrau Rock, which is the top of Europe. So this was the view from that first stop where you get off the gondola and onto the train. And again, we thought this was awesome. We were like, we're at the top, this is cool. We didn't realize we were 20 minutes from the top. So we were taking all of our pictures here, thinking this was where it ended. Then we got on that train, and halfway up the train, they stop, which is a scary feeling I've never ridden on a train with such an incline before. In a tunnel, I got a little stressy. But you stop, and this is permafrost, I think is what it's called. It's always frozen. And this is the first level we hit where everything's always frozen. So you stop, and you can get off, and there's some windows blown up into the tunnel. And this was the permafrost stuff there. So then you get to the very, very top, you go through these tunnels, and you get on an elevator, and it takes you to the top, and you're at the Sphinx Observatory. And that was us looking down on helicopters. We were above where helicopters can get to. And this is the view. I think this is the video. Yeah, so here's just a quick video looking around at the top of, the highest point in Europe. We're right between these two mountaintops is where this observatory is. There's just some pictures of that. My friend Carissa hates heights, so this was a little rough for her. It had that, the floor at a ski resort where it's like open grating. That's what it was. So I was like, don't look down. So we were between these two mountains. That was one of them. And then, this is the picture. Oh man, I couldn't stop staring in that direction. It was gorgeous. You'd probably die if you went sledding there, but there we saw some people hiking and doing some crazy stuff. So after we spent all the time up on the observatory, this was a spontaneous little trip. We didn't know what we were getting into. So we get back on the elevator, and it drops you off on a different floor. So then you start following the arrows. And it brought us to this massive snow globe, like massive. I can't explain how big this thing is, probably 10 feet in diameter snow globe, which was really cool to look at. And it had all of the stuff we had just gone through, all the towns. And then you come out of that, and then all of a sudden you're in an ice tunnel. So there's a railing here, but this is all ice, and the floor is all ice, which is as slippery as you can imagine it being. And we go, okay, I guess we're walking through an ice tunnel now, and there are a zillion ice sculptures in there. So here's somebody playing a piano. Again, we had no idea what we were getting into. I found Scrat. Any of you seen Ice Age? Any of the Ice Age movies? No? Okay. I think there's like 5 or 6 of them, and there's this little saber-toothed squirrel with a nut. He's always trying to eat this acorn, like through all of the movies. And for some reason, they had an image of him frozen in the top of Europe, which I thought was hilarious because it's one of my favorite movie series. And then there was a carving that said top of Europe. We were glad that we randomly had flannels and raincoats with us because, again, we had planned on going to a lake, not to the top of Europe. It was pretty cold. So you get to the very top at a different walkout, different lookout, and they've got these flags to take pictures with. The only thing keeping you from falling to certain death was just a rope. So I think you can see it in that picture. So it was sunny, obviously, but it was chilly. It was probably like 40. Yeah, I wasn't freezing. I did do a snow angel for a second, just because I'm going to regret it if I don't do a snow angel at the top of Europe. So I did. But that rope over there, those two ropes, are the only thing keeping you from just plummeting off the edge. So I don't know how they get away with that, but it's Europe. Just me and Carissa. Yeah. Oh, nope, it's just us. We got random strangers to take our pictures. And then that drops you off at this chocolate factory, which seems to very much just be a tourist trap, but I took a picture because I can't not take a picture at one of these things. It's Lindt chocolate, and there was a lot of it there. So then on the gondola ride, so we had packed, one of my favorite things to do in traveling is go to the local grocery stores and just grab some sandwiches and stuff, throw them in our backpacks. So that was the plan, so we actually were able to eat lunch up there instead of paying for the expensive lunch they had up there. And then we took the gondola ride down back, and these are some of the views on the way back down. This is one of my favorites. Oh, it's so pretty. And like that's not enhanced at all, that's just how green it is. And those gondolas are massive. They're like, I don't know, 20, 25 people fit in them. They're very, very big. And then after all of that, we stopped in another grocery store and got nothing traditional, sweet potato fries and empanadas for dinner, because why not? So the next day, we wake up, and this is where we're moving to Italy. So we get on a train, well, we take a bus to take a train to Milan. So that's our next stop. It's about 3 hours. So the first thing we do in Milan, we're just here for the afternoon and evening, the next morning to go to Florence. So we decide to go to the Duomo here. So this is the massive church that's there. And not to be confused with the Duomo in Florence, which we will get to. What was cool about all the churches there's always these candles or some version of these candles as you walk in. We found later some of them were automatic, and if you dropped a coin in, like it turned on the electricity to one of the candles, which is cool in a way to not waste wax and candles. But I made sure to light a candle each time I went into one for family and friends and stuff. And then, I mean, if you've been to Europe, you understand how massive these churches are, and photos cannot capture just how high these ceilings are and how big around these columns are. This is one of many dead people we see on our trip. They sort of mummify the bodies. They're covered in wax, and then they've got this mask that lays on top of their face, so you can't actually see their face, but it's an outline of their face. So this is just one of the cardinals that they have in that church. The stained glass on this entire trip is phenomenal. It's all different biblical stories, and they go up literally for stories and stories and stories up. But that was just some of the really cool stained glass. This church specifically had a really cool organ that I sent a picture of for Stephen. So in the same way that we loved crypts, we love to climb things. So Chris and I decided to climb this Duomo. It was only like 150, 200 stairs, which wasn't terrible. But it was hot. Italy was much, much, much hotter than Switzerland. But the architecture is so cool up there, and it's all marble. It's gorgeous. It's slippery. Luckily, it hadn't rained, but it was gorgeous. So we were up at the top. A congregant who will remain nameless saw this photo and told me to wear sunscreen, and I said, I just climbed 16 flights of stairs. That's why my face is red. But thank you. And that is the view from the very top. So you get to the very, very top, and it flattens out, and you're allowed to walk up and down it. And that's a gold, very gold statue of Mary at the top center. There's us up at the very top. It's flat, but like not entirely flat. You can see how it's sort of pitched. And that's just marble slabs, so there were some people slipping and sliding, but there are railings. So you weren't going to fall off the top of this Duomo. So we hit the top, and then we went into the basement of all of the churches, and I didn't realize that churches in Europe are built on top of each other. So we got to go in the basement and look at what the churches used to look like. This was a baptismal pool from a zillion years ago, and people have been throwing coins and money into it. But this is a couple stories below the current Duomo church. And that's just some of the crazy walls under there. And then when you leave the Duomo, there's this big shopping center that I'm sure has a name, but it just looks really cool. So I said, let's walk through that and see what we can see. So that's what it looks like from the outside. And then I think this is a video. If you get motion sick, I'm sorry, it goes fast. But this is what the inside looks like. It's just huge and has all these paintings and all this glass. And it's just a mall. Like all these shops down here that I'm not showing you are just like, yeah, there's Dior. There's just a mall. But everything's so fancy. And then on our walk back, we decided to find dinner. It's cool there that all the restaurants are out, almost all of them have outside seating. So we decided to sit in the street. That's what it looked like before sunset, and then that's what it looked like after sunset, which was really cool. I got pizza for the first time. It was lovely. First time in Italy, not the first time I ever had pizza, just to clarify. And then this is a middle finger statue. If you walk to the front of it, it's not like, there aren't fingers bent down, like there is nothing on those other fingers. And we Googled it, and it has something to do with middle finger to Mussolini kind of thing, but it was something we happened upon. We were walking down the street, and we looked down an alley and saw that. I was like, gotta take a picture of that. So there's weird stuff around every corner. So we slept there, and the next morning we wake up, and we hop on a train to go to Florence. So that's what that red line is. And that's where we're supposed to meet our group. So they're supposed to fly in that morning and meet us, and then we're supposed to go to a pasta making class so that they stay awake and adjust to the time. Right before we went to bed in Milan, we get a text from them that said our flight out of DC was delayed 3 hours, so we're not gonna make it. So eventually they do get to Frankfurt, and obviously they've missed their connecting flight, and there are no flights into Florence that day, so they end up having to wait in Frankfurt for like 6 hours, then fly to Pisa and take a train to Florence. So needless to say, we were on our own in Florence all day the next day. We did, but we were on our own as far as the group showing up. So the architecture there was just as cool. I think there were 9 total once everybody got there, so 7 people were joining us. So we were trying to navigate once again from a train station to some address we had on our phone, and we turn a corner and we just see this. We're like, oh, that must be the Duomo we're walking toward. And it's just gorgeous. This one's green, white, and pink, unlike the Milan one, which is all white marble. This is green, white, and pink. And they came from, our tour guide told us they come from 3 different regions of Italy, those 3 colors. Have any of you been to this one? You guys have? Did you climb it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. We had for the couple of tours we actually had as a group, we did the skip the line tours. So I'm assuming we paid extra for those, but it gave us a tour guide and we skipped to the front. So Carissa and I got there, we checked in, we rested for about 10 seconds and then realized we needed to start walking because we had a half-hour walk to our pasta class. So again, we put it in the GPS on Google Maps and just start following it. And we walk across this bridge, we're like, this is a cool bridge, we should come back to this. And then we found out later it's the Ponte Vecchio, which is a very famous bridge. We had no idea. We're like, oh, cool bridge. So that's what this picture is me saying, oh, this is a cool bridge. I had no idea. And then every time they shut a shop, so this is a picture taken later because that's Loanne, she's part of our group. But when they shut the shops, it's not just like in our mall where it's a rolling door, like it's these really cool wooden, ancient looking things. And I don't know, I loved it. They looked like big chest of drawer kind of stuff. So that was a view from our walk to the pasta class, not knowing where we were. And then we entered this thing called the spaghetti room. And again, there were supposed to be 9 of us and a separate class happening, but since only 2 of us showed up, they put us with the other class. So we made lots of new friends in this pasta class, as you can see. Pasta, have any of you done pasta making before? It's like 90 grams of flour and 1 egg. And that's it. And a lot of work, but that's it. So we made that kind of pasta, which we call fettuccine, and I don't remember what they call it. And that's all of our classes pasta made that. So we made the fettuccine noodles and then these 2 kinds of ravioli. And one of them is stuffed with ricotta and cinnamon and something else, and one of them is ricotta and garlic and something else. It was 2 really cool combinations I never would have thought of. And then they baked it as we talked, and then they gave it to us, and this is what it looked like. So this is with, I think, truffle oil on the raviolis, and then with just some basic tomato sauce on the fettuccine stuff. It was amazing. So our group gets there that night. The next day, the first thing in the morning, is the tour of the Duomo. So when you get in the Duomo, so if you looked at how the Duomo was structured, you're going to walk up some vertical stairs, and then you're going to start going around the dome part of the Duomo, and that gets a little tricky because the stairs get crooked for a while, and then the stairs are straight and the walls are crooked, and then you're like facing the dome and climbing up over it. But halfway up, you get to walk around the inner rim of the Duomo. So when you go from walking up the vertical stairs to the slanty stairs, you have to walk around half of the Duomo, and there's 8 feet of plexiglass, so you're not going to fall. But this is the view from 8 feet up, or not from off the ground at the base of the Duomo. And there's so many things to look at. Like, I recommend you Google these images and look at them. It looks like people are coming out of the ceiling up here, like their legs are dangling down. And these feet, if you look at them, the feet look like they could kick you. But it's all of the, I think it's Dante's Inferno, like all of the layers of hell and stuff like that are in there. There's a lot going on. So that's what it looks like from the ground. And this railing right here is the one you just saw me take a picture from. So this is, I think this is a video. So this is, you can see the plexiglass is plenty tall. We're not going to fall. That didn't keep people from being terrified, and you're not supposed to stop. So I had to take this video quickly. But you're walking, and there it is. It's just right there. Oh, so crazy. So then we get to the very top, you climb all the crooked stairs, and then a ladder, and you're at the top. And again, this looks very Italian, all of the red terracotta roofs and stuff. And this is the baptistry you said you were in. Yeah. Did you climb that one? It's okay. We didn't either, because we're like, after we climb this, why would we climb that? And then you can see in this picture that the stairs are actually straight. Like, Carissa is standing flat on stairs, but you can see how crooked the walls are compared to the stairs. It was cool to look at the walls. Our tour guide told us about the herringbone structure that they do with the bricks to make them support themselves. You just had to like not think about how ancient this building was and how much weight was in it. And then we found, the night before, Chris and I had found this really cute little shopping center with a Ferris wheel. So we decided to go back there that night, and this is what it looked like. I thought it was pretty. There's the Ferris wheel. We rode it, in case you're curious. You saw the Ferris wheel? We went to the Galleria, where David is. It was a little bit frustrating to be there because it was clear that people were there just to take their picture with David and not look at all the other art. This is not the Uffizi, this is the Galleria Accademia. This is the David. This is the David, yeah. No, that's him. That's him, he's in the Galleria. There are a number of versions of him in other places, but this is the main one. Yeah. Is it Michelangelo? Yeah, I felt, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was inside taking that photo. I was inside a museum. I know I was inside a building. It was air conditioned. It was nice. We spent as much time in there as possible. But there are a number of Davids throughout the city. Really good pesto pasta everywhere you go. So because I get tired of red sauce sometimes, so some pesto pasta. And then this is the back side of the Ponte Vecchio. Now that we knew what it was, I think these look really cool, just hanging out there over the river. There was a wedding happening right across the street. This is what it looks like lit up at night. And then bear with me, there's a number of sunset photos because we decided, Chris and I, after our pasta making class, decided to sit on the bridge as we watched sunset. So we were not the only ones doing this, as you can imagine. There were a zillion people watching sunset on the river. That's my favorite one, I think. So the group gets there, we do the Duomo trip, and then the next day we are told that we are taking a day trip to Siena, which ended up being so much more than that. We get on a bus and we end up going from Florence to Siena to San Gimignano to Pisa back to Florence. This is a whole day event. But do any of you know who Catherine of Siena is? Okay, so the first place to go is Siena. And this is what it looks like from far away. And that was some cool metal tree outside. And so St. Catherine of Siena, a few things about her. She was born in 1347, died in 1380 at the age of 33. So she was the youngest of 25 kids. Half of them died. She was a twin, but her twin died too. So she was born into a lower class family. She was said to have experienced a spiritual espousal where she spiritually married Christ. And then she was moved to start caring for the poor and the sick, but she took that quickly from caring for her community further, and she became sort of a political activist. There's a lot of stories about her interacting with popes and trying to help certain popes make spiritual reform or church reform. She helped to reorganize the church, and she's written dozens and dozens of letters and exhortations about people or things or theology. And the weird part is that both Rome, after she died, Rome and Siena fought over who would get her body. So her head's in Siena, in the church that we go to, and her body's in Rome, which we go to both those churches because people want to see the head and body of her. I don't have pictures, spoiler alert. So that's St. Catherine. So the first place we go is Siena. This is her church. This is the one where her head is. It's another gorgeous, gorgeous church. It's striped on the inside, which I thought was interesting. So this is another video. So again, just like massive, massive, massive building. That's where you preach from. There's so many pulpits I would be terrified to preach from. Massive organ. They're so pretty. They're ornate though, like, again, it would be hard for me to go, I stand here in bare feet. It would be hard for me to go preach from these churches. They're so big and ornate. So that's what it looked like, backed up a little bit. I don't know how I feel about the stripes, but it's not my church to decorate. And that was the Duomo at that church. So they all often have Duomos in them. And then that's what it looked like from far away. Yeah, they're so loud. And then all the stars up in the Duomo look cool. And then as you leave, I think this is a video too, Siena also is known for this big horse racing thing that still happens every year. You look like you know what I'm talking about. Do you? No. It's like all of the little, basically here, if all the little townships had a battle every year and they battled by racing horses, like to the death of the humans, that's what happens here every year. Like their version of townships fight to see who's the best. So this was us, and it's all slanted inward, and this is where they race horses around. They said it gets super dangerous. People watch them from up these balconies, but they race horses around that circle. So that's where we had to meet the bus, was there. Then we go to San Gimignano. There was no saint or anything involved in that. It was just a cool little town. So we ate lunch at that little restaurant. Took a load off because it was very hilly. These 3 cities we went to were super, super hilly. There's some really cool plates and things being sold on the streets. And that was the view from there. So again, you can see it's super hilly, and this San Gimignano sits on the top of a hill. They are known for their wine and boar head meat. So we ate both of those things on this part of the trip. And then we got on the bus and went to Pisa, which, have you guys been to Pisa? It's just not worth it. It's just not that interesting. It's really not. Like, this is it. It's a baptistry next to a church, which I feel like you never see this view where it's the 3 buildings there. But it's pretty unremarkable. I mean, it's just a building that's started falling over, and they said, oh no, and they structurally fortified it, and now it's just a tilted building. You can climb it for $25, 25 euro, which was a lot of money to climb up a tower, so we didn't do it. We just laid. No, it's not even a good story. Just the foundation wasn't great. There was sand under it. So as it started to tilt, they fortified it, and now it's done tilting, and you can climb it. So then we go back to Florence, and then our next trip takes us to Assisi, which is my favorite part. If you were in church today, I did the St. Francis of Assisi Benediction. That's what he's known for. But this was, again, my favorite part of the trip. So I think this is a video of this very much is a town up on a hill. Like there is nothing, and then you go up on this hill, you're in Assisi, and more than any of the other cities we went to, it was very non-touristy. So you could buy souvenirs, but it was not packed. There was not touristy stuff. Everything was in Italian, not in English, like a lot of the touristy places. And we stayed in convents all through the Italy trip. So I didn't take a picture of it in Florence, but this is a video of our convent in Assisi because the view's amazing. So we had a tiny bathroom, these beds. There's two of our group members, and then right out this window is the Basilica for St. Francis. Like that was the view. And the ground says Pax, like they mowed the grass so that it says Pax, which is peace in Latin. So another place where we decided to go underground. The ancient people built a temple to Athena. So this is what the original temple looked like. At this point when I'm looking at it, we're like way down here underground. So this is the main street. This is what it used to look like. This is what it still looks like from the street. And then we are taking a tour of the underground, which is down here. So it used to be like a public square where they would have like court cases and selling things. So first we go underground here. That's just the view of the Latin. The Latin nerd in me loved this trip. And this is the outside that I was just showing you, the gorgeous columns. And this is what the inside of the Temple of Athena looks like. I struggled a little bit on this part of the trip because as somebody who took Latin for so long, I was really looking forward to seeing some of the ancient stuff. And we did see a lot of ancient stuff, but I didn't realize that so much of what we did as Christians back in the day was come take down those pagan statues and put up Christian statues. So what used to be the Temple of Athena now has Mary in the back. So again, a lot of the stuff is still there, but that's something I had to wrestle with throughout this trip is we were taking down other people's stuff and putting it up, but then you have to give a hermeneutic of charity is what my professor used to say. Be charitable to the people we know now more than they knew then. What are you going to say, Sue? Hermeneutic. It means like the lens through which you think or read something. Not a word I knew till seminary. So this is back underground. So these are the original columns of that picture, that diagram I showed you. The original columns that would have been out front, outside of the temple. And then this was the bench that people would have sat on or done oration from. And this was the original wall. So I showed you there were the columns and then that wall that brought you down to the next floor. So this is the original wall from the next floor. And this is just some of the original mosaic from the floor, which is so cool. Like so many tiny pieces go into that. That peacock is a sign of welcome. This is a video of the Temple of Athena, so just the ornateness of it. So we thought that was super cool. And then this is just the view from on the top of the hill. So this is what you see everywhere in Assisi. This is the ceiling in another one of the churches there. Yeah, I think I have a better picture somewhere else, but yeah, some of these are three-dimensional. And some of them are like the center of the painting is just a painting. But especially when we go to the Vatican, some of those paintings are made to look three-dimensional but aren't. And then I love the roofs here. I don't know why, but they're not the red ones. They're like this gray slate stuff. It's just gorgeous. It was a gorgeous view. And that was on our walk back. This was another one of those, that might be the same picture, but they had another one of the baptismal pools underneath their churches. So we had a free day before we got to go do some St. Francis stuff, and as you might have sensed the theme of this, we saw a castle and decided to hike to it. So it's way up on that hill. Any Monty Python fans? Monty Python, Holy Grail fans? Sent this to my dad, and I said he said it's only a model, and that's a perfect picture for it's only a model. Like, that doesn't look real, because we were staying way down here, and we could only see the tip of it, and we had to hike all the way up to it, and it was closed. But, so we got all the way up to it. It was closed, but there was a cute little bar restaurant at the base of it, at the base of the castle, so we were able to get hot, fresh paninis and cold beverages, so it was a nice hike. It was worth it. That was part of the view from up there. That was some more of that sunset photo. Yeah. And some of the red, so this was the church to St. Clare. So I'm going to tell you about Francis in a second, but St. Clare, one thing I loved about her, or about Francis, is that he mentored her. So I love St. Francis a lot, and one thing I love about him is that he saw women in ministry as just as important as men in ministry. So St. Clare is actually somebody who took up his mantle after his death and carried it on. So this is her church. It used to be, her house is right here, and you can walk in the front door of what used to be her house and look around. But this is where her house was, and this is the top of her church. I will answer that in just a second, because we're going to talk about Francis, and then she picked it up at the end. So he died in 26, so she would have carried it on for another 20 years. So he was from 1181 to 1226, died at 44. So he grew up super wealthy. His dad was a clothing merchant, which meant he grew up wealthy, which meant he was somebody who partied, and he was known for drinking and partying in his youth. He was captured during a battle and was held in captivity for a year, waiting for his dad to pay his ransom. After he was released from prison, he supposedly heard the voice of Christ telling him to live a life of poverty. So he came back to his dad and he said, "I want to live a life of poverty." And his dad, the wealthy clothing merchant, said, "Absolutely not. That's not who we are." So he locked him in a tiny jail cell in this church that you can actually go see. Locked him in a tiny jail cell where all he could see, it was cement all around him and fence right at the front. And all he could see was the pulpit and the cross. There's not even a good demonstration here. If all I could see was that, and that was it, he was locked in there by his dad. Once he was released, he began giving away, or that was right before, he was giving away his family items, the poor people. His dad was so angry, that's why he locked him up. He developed a love of nature and animals, so he's sort of known as a patron saint of ecologists, of the environment, of animals, things like that. So whenever he's depicted, he often has a dog with him. He's known for preaching to birds, and he mentored St. Clare, like I said. So he saw something in her, and he raised her up to carry on that mantle afterward. So I really think he's a cool guy, and everything he stood for, I appreciated. There's him with a dog and a lamb. And his cross, so that's a cross without a top on it. That's the St. Francis cross. And the reason behind that was it's a tau, which is how he signed all of his letters, was with the tau, and it's the very last letter of the alphabet. So what he meant by that was faithfulness till the end. So I got a set of beads from there, and there's a tau cross on it. And there was a bunch of little statues of him. It always felt weird buying souvenirs from the churches, but what I liked about when you bought them from the monastery that I showed you a picture of, or not the monastery, the basilica that I showed you a picture of, 100% of that money goes back to the friars, to the order. So I felt okay buying their things there, but I thought that was cute. And this is, so I don't know why I didn't take a picture of it, but right here is the jail cell, and this is the church. that they've now built up from what it looked like back then, but they built this church around the jail cell. You can go to his house, on top of which they have built this church. So that's the original front door to his house from a long, long time ago. It's now in the chapel of his house, so you can see a dog down there, a bird down there, him in his rags, and I believe his dad looking at him disapprovingly. You guys know what pax et bonum means in Latin? Peace and goodness. So pax et bonum. So anything that St. Francis has pax et bonum on it, peace and goodness is what he stood for. So this is a railing on the way down to his original house. And that's the Basilica. That is the Church of St. Francis. As you can see, like I said, pax is carved is the wrong, mowed into the shrubs? I don't know. Carved into the shrubs is fine. And they actually had a concert there, our first night there. So we went over and listened to this big choral concert for a couple minutes. But we could also hear it from our window, because you sleep with the windows open because there's no AC, so you can hear everything. It's a progression of sunset photos again. When you guys were there, did you drink limoncello at all? Me too. But after dinner, you're supposed to have this little thing called limoncello, which is just... Okay, so we bought a bottle, and we thought it looked really nice right there in front of the sunset. Every night we would meet on this porch, and we would have devotions with our group to talk about where we saw God that day. And we had some limoncello that evening. We were in Assisi for 3 nights, I think, and then the next thing we did was take a train to Rome. At this point in the trip, this is where one of the women was sick, and when we got to Rome, she tested positive for COVID. So at that point, we sequestered her in a room while we continued to do all these other things. So we got there, we adjusted, we went to bed, and the next day, we hit everything you can imagine. So we did Vatican City, Sistine Chapel, and St. Peter's Basilica at the beginning of the day. So you guys have been there? Okay. So they brought us in and they fed us breakfast because it was like 7 in the morning. And then we start, here's just one of the ceilings inside the museum. There's some of the statues. I can't even describe how much there is in there. Like, I will not do it justice, but you go from room to room to room for like 2 hours. It's like statues and paintings and statues and paintings and statues and paintings and tapestry. So here's popes, and cardinals, and the paintings are so high, and even the stuff in between the paintings is ornate. There was so much to take in. It was overwhelming. There's some carvings in the wall, more ceilings. So that ceiling actually is 3D. It's like a carved ceiling. This part is 3D, but that isn't. But again, it's very loud and ostentatious, but it's cool. This was part of the Jesuit church, but I think we come back to that later. This was it's an ancient Roman story about a guy and his sons and the snakes attacking them. A guy just lounging there. You guys know who this is? Bacchus, yeah. This is the god of wine. So this is another, just, one of the zillion ornate paintings in the Vatican. This is a model, basically, of the scaffolding that was used to paint these rooms. Obviously, it's not the original scaffolding, but this is what it looked like. There's a secret room off to the side that everyone ignores because it's a tiny room and the tour takes you to the right, but off to the left there's a room of all Van Goghs, and I love Van Gogh. And our tour guide took us in there and I got a picture of one of them. It's another one of the ceilings where it looks 3D, but it's not. It's just some awesome painting. Again, another ceiling. You could spend hours and hours at each of these rooms and still not see everything. So this is the courtyard. I don't remember what it's called. It's the courtyard when you walk into Vatican City. There's this giant pole here. Do you guys know who Rick Steves is, the travel dude? So he has a free app. I don't know if you've ever used it. You should get it next time you travel anywhere. It's a free app where he gives you, it's a walking tour for all these places. So I was doing the walking tour as we walked through St. Peter's Basilica to try to learn some stuff. And this pole is representative of like the oppression of Christianity over time, and I guess it traveled to different places as they conquered different lands. But it represents Christians conquering people, and he had some snarky things to say about it. But that's that pole, and it's right in the middle of the square, and then that's St. Peter's Basilica. So St. Peter's Basilica is the largest church. This is the ceiling. If you stand at the back of the church, it is 2 football fields to get to that part of the church. And if you look at the floor, as you walk from the back to the pulpit, there are lines on the floor where it says another church's name, like Westminster Abbey would stop here, and the Duomo in Florence would stop here. Like, there are markers along the floor. It's just absolutely massive. They did some, I don't think I have a good picture of it, but they did some tricks of the eye in this basilica where the statues close to the ground are like 8 feet tall, and then the ones up on the ceiling are about 15 feet tall, but it's made to look like they're the exact same size. They're just so high up there, you can't tell. So like these statues are massive up here. That's just some of this. I like this one because it's like coming out of the ceiling. Just the paintings are absurd. They're so cool. And then after we left the Vatican and we left all of that stuff, as we walked back, we did the Colosseum and the Roman Forum and just around Rome.
So did you go into the Sistine Chapel?
You can't. Yes, we went into the Sistine Chapel. But yeah, I thought it was awesome. I could have stood there like this. I mean, it made me dizzy to stand there like that for a while, but I could have stood there for so long. It was helpful that our tour guide carried around a binder and would flip through things and say, like, this is a picture to look for, and this is a picture to look for, and here's what's happening in this picture, because then you look up and you understand. And there's, like, the Exodus is happening, and then some of the gospel stories are happening, so there's so much to look at. But yeah, you can't take pictures in there. You're not supposed to take pictures in there. That was like once. I wasn't allowed to take pictures in the basement of a place in Zurich, so.
You heard the story about how Michelangelo, didn't he put the Pope in or something like that? He was out of argument with the Pope, and so he put the Pope like sending it to hell.
The artists do some weird things. There's somewhere else that the artist depicted somebody naked to try to mess with him, and then somebody had to come through and like paint cloth everywhere. So yes, he painted the Pope not having a good day. So we went to the Colosseum. Again, Latin nerd in me loved it. It's big, as you can imagine. One of the cool things about the Colosseum, I think, is that they had the ability to plug it and flood it to do water battles. So there we are at the Colosseum. Yeah. Having walked through the massive corridors and all of the steps, yes, it would empty quickly. But it was a cool thing to visit for sure. Just seeing so many tourists were there. It was so hot. But it's an awesome building. You can't go to Rome and not see it. There's one of the big gates. They call these gates. It took us a while to adjust to that because we would call them like arches or something like that. They just call it a gate. But if there's, I think the next picture, there's depictions of battles being won throughout the inside of each of these. And then we went to the Roman Forum. That's what I heard. A funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. We really wanted that to be true, but just nothing happened. It was a short walk from the Colosseum to the Forum, like 5 minutes. But we just got to walk through all of the ruins and to look at stuff. We tried to go to the crypts, but the doors were shut. We walked into some of the cool little chapel things that used to be for the gods, and then we haven't messed with those too much. There were lots and lots and lots of gravestones or pieces of gravestones like that. Some rubble going on. You know what that is? The Pantheon. So we went to the Pantheon, which used to be Pantheon, lots of gods. It used to be just this big circular palace to the gods, and we have, again, removed all of those statues and replaced them with our own kings and queens. The body and grave of the king and queen, Queen Margherita, after whom the pizza is named, their bodies are in there. This, I think, honestly, I don't even know. While on our walk, we went to the first Jesuit church ever because one of the ladies' uncles is Jesuit and asked us to go there. So I think this is the Jesuit church. Again, really cool, really ornate, lots of cool painting. This is another one where it looks like the paintings are coming out of the ceiling, like they're dumping out, which I think is super cool. You get a crick in your neck when you go to Rome, just like, yeah, there was, I think in the Sistine Chapel, there were certain chairs that, like, the way they were built, you were supposed to sit and look up or something like that. Trevi Fountain, got a picture throwing a coin in. I felt bad throwing, I threw a dime in. I felt bad throwing money I could actually use there in. Do you guys know what these steps are? The Spanish Steps. I'll throw myself under a bus here when they're like, we want to go to the Spanish Steps. Why? Then we could see them, and I was like, those are the steps that Rocky runs up? And I got laughed at for that. They're like, no, it's Audrey Hepburn. I was like, yeah, no, I've never seen anything with Audrey Hepburn. So, well, I sat there. We all went and sat on the steps, just to say we had pumpkin risotto for dinner that night, which is amazing. Never had pumpkin risotto, but it was very good. And then the next day, we woke up and we said goodbye to our Italy teammates. And why are you shaking your head? Oh, they were fine. Well, they had to test for COVID to get back into the U.S. that night. And you can do it proctored now, so you get a Zoom link and some doctor watches you do all the swabbing and letting it sit there. And then you show it to them and you show them your ID, and as long as it's negative, they'll send you a PDF that you upload to the Delta or whomever you're flying. So we knew the one lady was still positive, but they all tested, and another person tested positive too. One of the team leaders tested positive. So we set them up, we left them there with the nuns, and then they had all their plans for how long they had to stay, where they were going to stay, and when they would test to come back. Oh, they were not very excited about it because they couldn't leave. The nuns were really on top of it. They wouldn't let them leave, like even to come into the hallway. So they didn't want to stay in Italy sick, that's for sure. So the rest of the team went home, and Carissa and I went to Munich for like 48 hours because she wanted to go to Germany. Yes, Munich. So again, churches. So one of the funny things about Italy, when you walk into a church, there's these signs that have all these pictures of what you can and can't do. So often it's pictures of covering your shoulders, and they give you a shame shawl, if not, like this paper cloak thing you have to wear. And it says no shorts, and then it says no flash photography, no dogs, no liquid, no food, all these rules for the ones in Italy. So we get to this church in Germany, which again is gorgeous. And I think the next picture, their sign says no ice cream, no cheeseburgers, no roller skates, and no dogs. So we couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, different rules here, no roller skates and no ice cream. We went to a beer garden because that's kind of all there is to do there. And it was gorgeous, just like a zillion tables. And you could buy as many pretzels and pints as you wanted. And we just sat there and hung out and relaxed from the busy parts of our trip. So the whole time I'd been asking Carissa to either do a Segway tour with me or rent the scooters that you see on the street. She's like, no, we're gonna get killed, we're in Italy traffic. She probably wasn't wrong. But we get to Munich and she looked around, she's like, this is the place. So we were super touristy, and we did a Segway tour, and I loved every second of it. It was so much fun. It's a fun way to get around once you get accustomed to it. So they took us to all these different cool sites. This was this big man-made lake on this massive park that they had built for all the locals. This is a statue of someone I don't remember, but this is part of one of their biggest bridges. And this is just what the cute little city looks like. This is part of our tour as well. They were telling us at this stop, I think the next picture, so this is the big building that's now a museum, but this is where Hitler hung out. So they bombed the heck out of Munich trying to kill Hitler. So all this stuff's been rebuilt, which is why the city's nice and the streets are nice and wide and like cement, not cobblestone. The buildings have been rebuilt, but this is the building where he hung out. They call this the Gate of Victory, and our tour guide was like, and we don't know why because there haven't been a lot of victories for us, but this is called the Gate of Victory, and there's a roundabout beneath it. Just some cool, very, very German architecture. And then this is, have you guys been to Munich? This is fun. I don't know why they do this, but this is a thing the locals do right here. They're surfing on this river. So there's just some big stones down here that are causing this surf, and all these people with surfboards here, and there's a whole bunch beneath me too lined up to just hop in, and that was a pretty long time for somebody to stay on. We watched people tumble off. It was cold. The water was cold. There are a bunch of these bronze statues everywhere. The funny part about this one is I was posing to take a picture with it, and it was Ascension Day, so there's an Ascension Day Feast going on, an Ascension Day parade. All the shops were closed. We had no idea when we were planning this trip. So right before this picture was taken, I was trying to pose with this boar, and this local dude came up to me. He was probably like 21 or 22, didn't speak English. He was like, hey, and I could tell he wanted to get in a picture with me, so I was like, sure. And so there's this whole series of photos where I look uncomfortable and awkward, and he's all excited because he's going to a party. I'm just trying to get a picture with this boar. So this is the picture that resulted from it. I didn't put any of the other ones in there. Just some really, really cool, bright architecture there as well. And some really good dessert. We but I didn't really want to go in any more churches at that point. We'd done churches for like 10 days. I was like, I'm okay if we don't hit any more churches. And then again, I said we found the Ascension Day Feast. So we are walking down the streets trying to decide what to do. And I said, I see some tents over there. Let's go in that direction. So we turned and started walking that direction. And it was a massive fair of all kinds of fish and all kinds of alcohol. And we didn't stay there because it was a little bit crowded. But this fish was like being done over some sort of a wood-fired grill. And it just went on for blocks and blocks and blocks. And we had no idea what we had happened upon until we Googled it. Oh, they take that seriously here. So as we kept walking, the traffic was stopped, and it's because there was a massive processional going toward a church where they were on a loudspeaker and they were singing hymns as they walked this Ascension Day processional to their worship service. And then this is the flight home. So we went from Munich to Amsterdam, was our first flight, nice and easy. And then Amsterdam to Boston, and then Boston back to Pittsburgh. The end. Everything went as scheduled. You can stop it. Okay, what?